Good evening and welcome to Poetry Town in Strokestown on Culture Night. This is the penultimate event. It's the unveiling of Strokestown poem by Poet Laureate Noelle Lynskey. Noelle from Strokestown was commissioned by Poetry Ireland to write this poem as part of Poetry Town, as well as delivering a number of initiatives in the town during the week. Joining Noelle tonight is musician Cathy Jordan and writer Gerry Boland. So welcome to you both, and welcome, of course, to Noelle. Delighted to have you here. Poetry Town is an initiative of Poetry Ireland, funded together with Roscommon County Council and the Arts Council of Ireland. And organising our events locally has been Anne O'Leary. So we're very grateful to Anne for her great work in organising all of the events for Poetry Town. So now, without further ado, I will hand you over to the performers. Thank you.
Thank you, Rona. It's lovely to be here, very close to my birthplace. I was born out the road in Scramogue, and I went to school in a place called Corrow, which I thought might be nice to do this little song which features Corrow. And it's from a poem I found in an old neighbour's house after they died. The neighbours were the Nangles, and the poem was written by Patrick Devine in 1901. He emigrated to America, and he lamented for his childhood in Corrow. And it's I suppose it brings up memories of all our childhood days in wherever we were in a different Ireland in a different time. So this is in Corrow. I put the music to myself, so we'll see how it goes. I haven't done it in a while. In Corrow the fields are green, the skies are fair. Slievon is crowned in heavenly sheen, stands silent there. And even now, amid hopes and fears, the tears will flow as I look back on misty years to Corrow. In Corrow, we Kelly's made ghost stories told, then home returning so afraid of fairies bold. For ghosts and goblins did abound, roam to and fro, o'er every rat and glen and mound in Corrow. In Corrow the wild birds sing their sweetest lays, they echo through in songs of praise. The cuckoo call sounds soft and clear, heaven bends low. Oh, paradise seems very near in Corrow. To Corrow fond memories cling where'er we roam. Backward we tread on fancy's wings to the old home. Again we hear the chapel bells, see streamlets flow, o'er whinny hills and grassy dells in Corrow. In Corrow we meet no more in joyous bands, we're scattered far and foreign lands. Oh, lonely hearts sojourning here before we go. Oh, pause with me very much, Patrick. Divine poem from 1901, and I'm sure we have a Corro member of the audience actually here this evening, and it's not as sad as all that. They do meet in joyous bands every now and again, so not to be too sad about things. So I want to introduce our first reader this evening. His name is Gerry Boland. He's from County Dublin, but has made his home outside Keeju in County Roscommon. So he's one of us now. And so Gerry, in 2011 and 2012, O'Brien Press published his trilogy, A Rather Remarkable Grizzly Bear. The first of which, Marco Moves In, was nominated for an Irish Book Award. And in addition to poetry, Gerry has also published fiction and travel books. So please give him a warm welcome, Gerry Boland.
Thank you very much. That was a lovely welcome, Cathy, and a beautiful song.
Thank you.
Follow that, as they say. But anyway, I'm going to try. I write very short poems. And I'm just going to read 3 of them. A lot of my poems would be quite personal, but I looked for some poems that had some kind of local aspect to them, and I dug up a few. So this one, when I came down to Roscommon first, one of the ways I kind of became embedded into the community was through writing. And I became involved in the Moylord Writers in the early 2000s. And for a short period, we didn't have a place to meet and write, so we were meeting in the Stonehouse Cafe in Boyle, any of you who know that. And so that was just for about a year before we moved to the library where we took up residence. And so this poem is called Poetry and Physiotherapy. It's a light-hearted poem about our time there. Poetry and Physiotherapy. Inside the cafe, the poets hunker down, united in their bad posture. It's a pressure cooker where creative juices overheat, abandoned cappuccinos cool, minds are bent and stretched. The physio, morning coffee break over, hikes back across the hunched bridge. She has left her card on the counter for the mind benders with the backaches. That's Poetry and Physiotherapy. Some years back, a good many years back, you'll remember that we had a winter of snow. And this poem came out of that, and it really only got finished in the last 6 months. So that's sometimes how long a poem can take. And it took place just locally, just down the road from me in one of the quiet roads near Keeju. And it's called Snow. On a long, lonely road, I meet a man out cropping, his daily kale, his cabbage and his sprouts. Farmer's wellies, an old winter coat. We talk about his crop, and of course the weather, always the weather, and the latest to die an easy or a tragic death. Not the icebreaker we need, but it keeps us going, keeps us connected. We are 2 low-impact humans, treading lightly on the earth, understanding what makes a day bearable. Homegrown greens just picked, a ride on a bicycle in the snow, a neighbourly chat, a chance to laugh. Our voices reclaim the past. Broad consonants settle in the snow. Hard syllables echo back at us before rushing like frightened animals across the white meadows. And then the last poem is 10 years old, because this first collection, The Watching Clouds, came out, I can't believe it, 10 years ago. And it's about the village close to me, Keeju, which has won the tidiest town in Ireland on 2 occasions, 1993 and 2003. And this is called A Very Tidy Village. And the poem came when I was driving into Keeju, probably about 12 years ago. It was a lovely sunny day. And on the left, as I was driving in from the Drumshanbo side, there's a little bit of a hill. And on that hill, on a sunny day, were about 12 cows just lying there looking very tidy. And so I wrote this poem, A Very Tidy Village. Even the cows are tidy in Keeju. They lie in manicured meadows, a neat pastoral composition, duly noted by the tidy town's judges. It can't have been easy persuading the beasts to toe the line, throw their considerable weight behind the orderly local committee. No one knows why they came on board. Cows care a little for neatness, even less for personal hygiene. Some say it was the perseverance of the Tidy Animals Subcommittee, who after Mass every Sunday stood at the wall of the meadow to offer a role model to the cows, who continued to chew the cud, on the face of it oblivious to the curious human choreography, yet perhaps taking it all in slowly, as cows tend to do. Thank you very much.
We go up to Crockery for this next song, and it was written actually by the same man who gave us our national anthem. His name was Pather Kearney, and apparently he used to frequent in his youth Crockery from time to time at least, and he wrote this little ditty about a romance that took place among the meadows in Crockery back with for the O. Were you ever below in the town of Crockery, meadows all ripe on a fine summer's day? 'Twas there that I first met with sweet Molly Doherty, laughing and singing and making the hay. Oh, Molly, come on, I'll hold you now, Molly, come on. I'll roll you now, Molly, come on. I'll bet you a song. 'Twill be better diversion than saving the hay. There's a sauger to ruin below in the Crockery. Quickly we found him one fine summer's day. He tied me up tightly to sweet Molly Doherty. Finches and linnets were singing away. Oh, Molly, come on, I'll hold you now, Molly, come on. I'll roll you now, Molly, come on. I'll bet you a song. 'Twill be better diversion than saving the hay. Tis 50 long years since we came to Crockery. Our eyes are dim, our hair it is grey. And whenever sweet Molly attempts to get cross with me, I just grab a holt and I warble my lay. Oh, Molly, come on, I'll hold you now, Molly, come on. I'll roll you now, Molly, come on. I'll bet you a song. 'Twill be better diversion than saving the hay. Oh, Molly, come on, I'll hold you now, Molly, come on. I'll roll you now, Molly, come on. I'll bet you a song. 'Twill be better diversion than saving the hay. Don't be making the Thank you so much. It's really lovely to be here this evening with such great talent, and I'm delighted to introduce to you our Poet Laureate in residence, Noelle Lynskey, born in Portumna, County Galway. Now living in Portumna, County Galway, but born right here in Strokestown. Excuse me, that was a terrible mistake to make on behalf of Strokestown, because we like to claim any kind of connections at all. So, Director of Shorelines Arts Festival and facilitator of the Portumna Pen Pushers. Her readings include the Galway Court Literary Festival, the Baffle, the Inishcaltra Arts Festival, Terry Glass Arts Festival, Clifton Arts Festival, etc., etc. And she also has, you might have heard some of her works on Sunday Miscellany. So she's currently a student at the University of Limerick and enjoying a Master's in Creative Writing. So please give a warm Strokestown welcome home to Noelle Lynskey.
Thanks, Cathy, and you're forgiven for, because sometimes I don't know whether I'm in Portumna or in Strokestown. I'm in two places by locating a lot of the time. It's just a great pleasure just to be live. Doing something live is wonderful, and to be doing it in my hometown and to be awarded this honour of Poet Laureate is really very special to me and means an awful lot to me. T.S. Eliot, the poet, said, "Home is where one starts from," and it is where my love of words started from. I think of Percy French in the hotel here and all his songs and words that I learned playing the guitar and enjoying as a teenager. And at school, my English teacher, Jim Gibbons, was a huge influence, and the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock from Eliot was one of my favourites, down through Yeats, Wordsworth, Kavanagh, all of them. And so it's fitting that my words come back to Strokestown many years later, and I'm just really, really delighted. And thank you, Anne, for organising everything today. And it's lovely to share the podium with Cathy and with Gerry as well. So I'm going to read just 3 poems. The third one will be the poem that got the full stop on it today. I'm an awful one for editing and re-editing. So the first one I'm going to read is called Laudate, and it's for Charlie Travers. I call him because he insists on not being called Monsignor, but he is residing in Roscommon in semi-retirement as a Monsignor, but I think anyone in County Roscommon would have known him for his care as a pastor all his life, and he was very special in my life because he always turned up at the right moment. So this was written for him when he was 60 years ordained. Laudate. For 60 years he carries psalms in his pockets. His feet move with the ease of one who has measured the lightness of his own pace. A bell rings at noon and 6 to the rhythm of his trimmings and vespers, while a faint hum trills from his hearing aid. Eyes that are kind and ever outward deflect his aging need for a helping hand. His curved back is more a genuflection. He reflects my concern with his heed for me. In alb and surplice he cloaks me in his faith. He is the rosary at my grandfather's grave, the purple stole that calms my mother's leaving, the consoling hymn across generations of grief. Through my stained glass woman's heart he radiates hope, as brilliant as the lunula of the monstrous, so blessed in his hands. When he joins his palms in prayer, he is a church spire high above the street. And this one is a Strokestown poem, and it's going back to my youth when at one stage in the local shop called Green's, where SuperValue is now, somebody was sick in the house, and I think it was actually Peggy in the house got married and she went on honeymoon, so they needed a little bit of help around the shop. So it was my first job behind a counter, but it was a real learning experience and a loving experience. And I'd just like to mention and maybe send a culture night wish from Ireland to Frank Green, a grandson of Frank in this poem, whom I've never met, who connected with me during COVID on Facebook, and he lives in Australia. So Frank, this is for you and for everybody else who remembers Maggie and Frank, and I've called it Sunday Ritual. From the front door of their small shop that opened into the back room, I watched the soaping of his shiny apple head, uncapped only on Sunday mornings, herself leaning over the kitchen sink in her ritual, as personal as a whispered prayer. My wonder at the sight of a wife washing a man's face, her hands circled in bubbles, cupping the water to rinse the week away, then shave his stubble in sandy strokes. The kettle boiling on the Rayburn, 2 eggs poaching, his gleaming face renewed. Only the wheeze from their red shop door lured me away to serve at the counter, witness to an intimacy I couldn't fathom at 11. Their comfort with my presence steadily drew me in to share their table, taste my first salted island of yellow yolk, set in a shining sea of white. My first glimpse of the comfort of a poached egg, of a woman so loving, of a man so naked, so loved. So this is the poem I've written for Strokestown. The instructions from Poetry Ireland were 30 lines, and that was the hardest part because I could write 130 lines. I wanted to get so much in, and so it started like a big weight on my and it has had to reduce, but that's poetry. That's what it does. I also wanted to shape it a certain way because for me Strokestown stands out for the shape of the town, the fact that it's a cruciform, the fact that you have 2 long streets and 2 wide streets. So I've got 2 wide verses and 2 narrow verses, and I managed to fit them in a 30-line structure. So that was a little bit of doing, but I hope it'll mean a lot to everybody in Strokestown because every word of it means a lot to me. My town, Strokestown. Steeped in your rushes and bogs, a town to pass through on the way to the west, your big house stands alongside the new Famine Museum. Strokestown, you shaped me, giving me the run of your wide streets, my young legs sweeping from your bawn gates to the inkwells of Sculwirra, your long incline to the turn of Farn, the perfect runway for your westward fleet of Scania trucks. My town, fashioned by a straight rule, home to processions, confessions, fair days, show days, holy days, the witness to all my firsts. Kiss, fall, medal, loss, first place to leave, first place to miss. Up the town from Tanner's Turn, I'm 4 years old, my milk can spilling as I roll down into your hollow, where Bernie Feeney leans forever over his farm gate. Arm in a sling puts a short halt to the schoolyard hopscotch among your melody of McCormack, McDermott, McPhillips and McHugh. Out of town I cycle at 17, with phrases of Virgil, Kavanagh and Parnell, gleanings from Morahan's printing press, lilting from Thaddeus on a flat day, jigs trebled on the stage in the Magnet, embroidered with threads from Dondlan's, taps and laces in Shevlin's, Connolly's shiny buttons, and hemlines refashioned in Molly Larkin's smoke-filled room. On days the Rossies win, John McManus pours his smile across the butcher's block, the long length of his cigarette ash between his lips, a mesmerising trick. Just like the zip line of money whizzing across the ceiling of Jimmy Henry's hardware store, and Nell Flaherty's Drake that floats away over Anthony Byrne's bar. Sweetness lingers too in the paper-coned bonbons from O'Neill's, the promise of a barley stick from Sheehan's, endless ham sliced across Green's counter, and sleeves of scallions and ribbons of rhubarb fresh from Pat Collins's garden. In Bernard Chapman's mural, Paddy Riley sits alongside Percy French. He'll never make it back to Ballyjamesduff. Never leaving you, Strokestown. Never leaving me. That's it. Thank you.
That was absolutely phenomenal, wasn't it? Yeah. I want a copy, by the way.
Only if you put music to it.
I'll do my best.
There's a plan.
So, you mentioned your first job, and in this very hotel that we sit in was my first job. And I'd say this was a bedroom at one point, and I would have made the beds and then ended up in Danielle's downstairs. But Percy French was part of my youth, his songs and his... he was such a great character and a satirist, and so I thought I'd leave you with this song that I suppose everybody knows at this point, and you can sing behind those masks and out there in internet land as well. Thank you so much. It was an honour and a privilege to be here. Thanks to Anne and to Rona for making it all possible, and have a happy culture night. This song, I might as well tell you as well, was part of a little project I have been involved in and is ongoing, called the Cranky Island Project, and it's illustrating songs, and I illustrated 9, I think there's another 3 on the way, songs from Roscommon, and this is I collaborated with an artist, and you can go to Cranky Island Songs on YouTube to find the illustrations that go along with this song called Eileen Og. Thank you all very much for joining us. Thanks to Gerry Boland and Noelle Lynskey and everybody for joining us. Thank you so much. Eileen Og and left the diamonds limits through the poverty her features they were famous. If we loved her, who was there to blame us? Why wasn't she the pretty better of all? But her beauty made us all so shy. Not a man among us could look her in the eye. Why so why? Sure, that's the reason why we're mourning for the pretty better of all. Eileen Og, we had to go away ever since the day you won the far away. Eileen Og, there's good fish in the sea, but there's none of them like the pretty better of all.
pray to Petra more.